Welcome to Conversations with Colie, where we have conversations about subjects we think about but often don't speak about. My name is Nicole Miller, and I'm the author of this book series, A through Z Guide to Raising a Good Human, a series I wrote to help in the communication process. Another episode of Conversations with Colie. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Elizabeth Correia. Elizabeth's mission is to help women learn how to recreate themselves so they can start a journey toward healing. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So we'll start with your icebreaker question. You're
Okay.
in an abandoned building surrounded by a mob of zombies. You're unarmed and they are all blind. How do you escape?
Crawling on the floor.
There you go.
That's
The
the
army
street
crawl.
sense in me that just came out.
Yeah. Get low.
Yes, exactly. You know, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
Interestingly enough, my father is actually blind, born blind.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So you have experience on how to escape blind zombies then. So
Yes.
tell us about your background.
Okay. In terms of my story or
Whatever you want everybody to know about you, just a little brief.
okay. So yeah, I'm Portuguese. I grew up in a typical traditional Portuguese household. I am one of four at home. Growing up, my father had two more children in his second marriage. When we were just about on the way out, there was one, and then they had another after. I grew up in the projects in Toronto, and yes, there's projects in Toronto. There's projects in Toronto. Yeah, so I grew up, in a rough neighborhood, and I also grew up in, an extremely abusive household. Both parents were physically, mentally, verbally abusive, and my father was also sexually abusive.
Hmm.
And that started off, I was so young. I don't even remember when it started. That's how young I was. And that went on for a long time. And at 14, I'm just kind of speeding up the story.
Yeah, that's okay.
I decided to speak out. My sister and I spoke out, and we were removed from the home. My father was arrested. Um, we were separated, which was traumatic on us. We didn't expect that to happen when we were, we always say that we think if we had known that we were going to be separated, we would have never spoken out.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, because of it felt that trauma felt more painful than what we dealt with as little girls at the time.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
Um,
see that.
yes. So yeah, we were put into care, and I lived in meant over 10, 11, 12 homes in the first 6 months. I was running away from some of them. I got kicked out of some of them. I literally became a product of my environment. I
Yeah.
was angry, I was broken, I was sad, I was confused. I missed my family, as bad as things were, because
Yeah.
it's all a child knows.
Mhm.
And then I got into a relationship with a young man. Well, he was a few years older than me. I was 14, almost 15. This is when I first went into care. And I literally got into a relationship with a man who was just like my father.
Mm.
And that was extremely abusive,
Mhm.
physically, verbally, in every way. And we had a child. I got pregnant at 16. And then we had my son, who's now turning 30. That's how long ago that was. um, so and I stayed in that relationship for about 5 years, and then I managed to escape that relationship. It was just getting worse and worse. And I got out of that relationship. I ended up meeting another young man who I say was like an angel. You know,
Mhm.
um, he got me away from that, and just I would say was the first, experience of love that I had, whatever that meant to me at that age.
Mhm.
It felt safe, it was respectful. We had a beautiful, beautiful relationship and bond. Um, and then he was actually murdered in front of me, and he died in my arms.
Oh, no. Oh
Yeah,
my
it was
God.
road rage.
Wow.
Yeah. So um, that was when I would say, things got really dark and ugly before they got better.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have used this word at the time because nobody used it at the time, but I definitely went into a depression.
Mhm.
I didn't want to do anything. I wasn't getting out of bed. I wasn't eating. And then that's when, why I called him and call him my angel was because at the time I needed that escape and I needed him. And then it was what happened in my life after he was gone. I went on a spiritual quest and just, I'd like to say, I wrote this actually at the back of my book. I was saved in the eyes of the church. So,
Okay.
yeah, that was where my healing journey really began and went on for about 10 years. And that's where I discovered my passion. That's where I discovered my purpose. Um, yeah, and I started going because of the pain I was dealing with his death, and
Yeah.
then everything else that came up about my childhood that I buried under the rug, that I never wanted to face, that I never wanted to talk about, that I never dealt with. So
Yeah.
so much greatness came out of such a horrible, horrible, horrible thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I went on that journey and I started sharing my story in small groups at church, and I'd never done that before, never spoke about my story, and it was a huge part of my healing, a huge part of my healing. And then I eventually started writing my story, and I started, see, it's interesting because I started speaking for pay once when the book came. I was
Right.
That gave birth to my speaking career, but I actually was already speaking,
Right.
in church, and I started, what I was 23, 24, speaking in small women's groups. I was very active in the ministry, so that was already, I think I was just being prepared for
Yeah.
what was to come. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
100%.
yeah, so that's my story. That's my background. That's how I got here. I like to call it
Okay.
the 4 Ps. It's how I moved from pain to passion to purpose to pay.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
love
get
that.
paid for my pain. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
there was a time where it's like you were so crippled in shame. It's like you wouldn't even talk about that pain.
Right. Right.
And it's just amazing what I have, been able to do with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually was looking at your social and yes, absolutely. And to come from such a painful background because a lot of people I think they try to measure their trauma and say, well, this is why I'm entitled to stay in a depressive state or to stay stagnant. And so a lot of people don't come to that enlightened stage after,
Yes.
especially so much bad happening to you. After you
Yes.
don't succumb to it, you rise above it, right?
Yes, exactly.
So for those that are out there right now, kind of suffering in it and not
Mhm.
seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, how long did this trauma of yours from your childhood all the way to losing your love,
Mhm.
how long did this trauma haunt you before you finally were like, okay, I need to make this decision and this is the path I want to go on?
Mhm. That's a really good question because, I think what people don't understand about transformation, and I'm not talking about change, because I mean, they're very different. And I'm also talking about permanent transformation. It's a journey, and we really have to be, patient with ourselves. If I were to go back and say something to that young girl, myself as a teenager in my 20s, the one thing I would have said is, breathe, be patient with yourself. This takes time.
Mhm.
We're talking about 25 plus years of trauma.
Mhm.
And when you're born into it, it's a whole different ball game. It's not just I was in a, physically abusive relationship. I was born into trauma, into pain. It was all I knew. It was all I knew, not only towards myself, but watching my siblings get beat, especially my older brother, who still lives in so much of that pain, but I think mentally, having to watch that, and watching my mother get beat up all the time as a little girl, and you can't do nothing. It's, unless, you've lived it, it's extremely painful. So you have to be patient with that healing process and know that, you know, this too shall pass. Like, it's going to pass. It's when you start to deal with the hurt and the bruises and the wounds, and you be patient with yourself, you love on yourself, you start taking care of yourself, you will heal. You
Mm-hmm.
will heal. But it just, and I think everyone's journey is different, and then that all depends on how much trauma is there, like what happened. It also depends on, are these people that hurt you alive, or have they gone? I noticed that sometimes people take longer, and it almost seems much harder when the people who hurt them are no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a hard process for them. And what I always say is that, you know, I never needed my parents and my ex, or I also, my divorce was also another trauma that happened in
Mm-hmm.
my early 30s. And then I didn't mention this, but I survived emergency brain surgery 10 years ago. That was the last thing that happened. Everything's been, beautiful since
Yeah.
that, but that was trauma too. I
Yeah.
had a brain tumor. I almost died. Um, so it's, and I think I learned a lot about healing, um, with the brain surgery experience. I think that taught me a lot. It really just opened up my eyes to, um, how I was or wasn't taking care of myself. You know, I learned to be patient with myself after that. I learned to stop doing a lot. And I found that, prior to brain surgery, I was a professional doer. I was just
Mm.
doing, 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 and not even, I wasn't even celebrating my milestones. I wasn't even celebrating my own success, even if it was something small. I was just ready to do another thing, and just to prove to everyone that I could do something, that I was good enough, that I had what it takes, that I have what it, you know, I can do all things, kind of thing. And it was just to prove a point.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't connected to self. I wasn't connected to who I was, or who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, how I wanted to feel. That was
Yeah.
so huge, because my whole life it was about, what am I going to do, and what am I going to be, and it was always about that, and I never stopped to think. And I actually have a workshop about this now, and a presentation, a talk. How do you want to feel?
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to
Yeah.
feel? Never mind what you're doing, because you can barely feel when you're doing all these things. You're not even feeling. When we're cleaning and cooking and taking care of the kids and working on our business, or going to work and coming home and rushing to cook and rushing to do this, and we're not. It's like we're like numb. It's
Operating on survival mode.
and that was something that I got super, clear with, and
Mm-hmm.
um, delivered myself from,
Mm-hmm.
was that is I was operating in survivor mode. I wasn't feeling anything. And so when you get clear with, your core desired feelings, as Danielle Laporte puts it, your spirit desired, core desired feelings. How do I want to feel? Well, I want to feel peace. I want to feel healthy. I want to feel influential. And I want to be influential. I want affluent. I
Mm-hmm.
want to feel connected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that I know how I want to feel peace, well, what do I need to do to feel peace? Now
Mm-hmm.
I can set my goals according to how I want to feel. And for anyone listening, you have to get clear with how you want to feel, even before you get clear with what you want to do. Ever since we were children, many of us going through trauma and abuse, it's been embedded in our minds, that we must know what it is we want to do.
Yeah.
These kids, I work with a lot of youth. I'm a youth speaker as well. And they're being asked and pressured to know what they want to do and be in elementary school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but most of the young people I know barely know who they are at 25.
Yes. I didn't know who I was till I was 25.
Listen, I figured out in my 30s. You were ahead of me. Okay. But
Yeah.
like, so it's I think that is so important to
Mm-hmm.
just really, how do you want to feel?
Mm-hmm.
And then set goals according to how you want to feel. Maybe you think you want to be a lawyer. You know, okay, so how am I going to feel going through 8 years of school or whatever, and raising kids and doing this and maybe taking care of your parents and everything else? You know, is that how you want to feel? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want more freedom to be present with your children, to do work on passion projects and do the things that you love? Okay, so then what's and something else, if you want to feel peace and relaxed and freedom, does that mean maybe start a business instead? So everyone's doing it the other way around.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to start with how you want to feel. And that was where my healing journey started, was when my spiritual mother, as I like to call her, she said to me, I was having a really bad day this day. I think I was like maybe 24, 25. And I was, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was serious about my healing, but then I would go back to like hanging out with the same people and having these broke conversations. And, I was just tired of my environment. And,
Yeah.
um, and, she said to me, okay, well, how do you want to feel, Elizabeth? And I was
Yeah.
like, how do I want to feel? I don't know. Like, and I started saying things like loved, um, accepted. I don't want to feel judged. I want to feel appreciated. I want to feel successful. And she said, okay, first of all, you take all the EDs off. Because when you say loved, appreciated, accepted, all these EDs, everything that ends with a D, that means you're looking for something outside of you. And unless you get that thing outside of you that you're looking for, that means you're never going to be happy. No, how does Elizabeth want to feel? Internally, how do you want to feel? And I said one word. And this was before I even studied Danielle Laporte's programs, because she speaks a lot about core desired feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And my one word was happy.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said it, I started bawling,
Oh.
because I had never said that before.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, okay, okay. And you will. So let's create a plan for you to feel happy. I
Yeah.
was like, okay. But we're going to change that word to joy. She said, because happiness is external and temporary. It's dependent on what's happening around you. You get your nails done, you're happy. You buy a new pair of shoes, you're happy. You wear them twice, you're over them. Joy is internal and eternal. So no matter what happens around you, no matter what anybody does to you, they can never take away your joy,
Yeah.
because it's internal. It's not dependent on them or a thing or how much money you have or your material belongings. It's internal and it will always be there. And so I started from that moment creating a life of joy. And
I
it
love
took
it.
time.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. Everyone in crisis or in a negative spot wants that quick fix. It's not real. You can't get a quick fix when you have endured, like you said, 25 years of trauma, 30 years of
No.
trauma. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yes. Yeah. And you said quick fixes. That's a big word right there, because um there's a lot of quick fixes. And whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever people use as quick fixes. um and I'm so grateful to, I would say, my grandmother, who I know watches over me every second of my life. She was my one. Like, I was just so obsessed with her. She was my saving grace in so many ways. I actually shared a bed with her and my sister my whole childhood, and it was a
Oh.
double size. It wasn't even a queen. um, so I say I was very fortunate to have that for 11 years of my life, almost 11 years of my life. And I always knew as a young girl that I didn't want to be like those people that in the streets that I saw every day that I lived in the middle of, it's the projects, it's drug
Mhm.
dealers, drug addicts, prostitutes, homelessness, crazy people, as you would
Yeah.
call it when we were little, right? Now we use the word, mental illness, and
Mhm.
it was all it was all around me. Like I
Mhm.
lived smack dead in it.
Mhm.
Actually, my parents had it, so I really was smack dead in it. Um, and I always knew as a little girl that I would never do drugs and that I would never be like what I was seeing.
Mhm.
Now, I did start selling drugs at 14, and I did that for a long time throughout my teens, but I never touched them.
Oh wow.
No. And I lost friends to it. By the time I was 22, I think I'd been to like 22 funerals.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Um, but I always knew that wouldn't be me, even as a young girl. And I believe it is why I'm still here.
Mhm.
I know that is why. Um, Two of my best friends are, um, addicts, and they started very, very young. And it actually destroyed our friendship because I just got to a point where I didn't want to be around that anymore.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it was definitely not my destiny. I know that,
Mhm.
and I always knew that. I knew that as a young girl. I knew that if I ever tried a quick fix like that I'd be done, dead.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I told myself that I
Mhm.
will be one of them that tries it for the first time and overdoses. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And quick fixes too. People expect, okay, I want to be done with depression. I'm going to say it out loud, snap my fingers, my life is fixed. They think of it
no
that way
way.
as well. So it's like, no, you have to put in the work. So, how hard is the work?
Can I? You know what? I'm gonna say this. Another great question too. I That is when I truly started living. That was when I truly started living. It's not hard, Nicole. We make it hard
Exactly.
because this machine here, we're not, being renewed and transformed starts here
Mhm.
by the renewal of our minds. But we let this and the thoughts that we put there, that we constantly entertain and over and over and over, and I'm not good enough, and I can't do this, and no one's going to love me, and I'm not going to get this job, and I'm never going to make money, and I'm not going to find love, and it's what we do to ourselves, and we have to renew that. We have to literally change, stop speaking death into our life and start speaking life into your life. And
Mhm.
even if it's called faith, believing in the unseen, faith. It's like, I believe I'm going to be healed. I can see that I'm going to be healed. I'm already healed.
Mhm.
Instead of saying, this is so hard, and I don't like this, and oh, it's not working, and I didn't get the job, and complaining, and God, and if you get so down on yourself, and so you have to start by this, like, stop blaming anything or anybody else.
100%.
Like, even if it's someone you're in a relationship with, okay, well, you're choosing to be there.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
like, until we become self-aware, and self-acceptance, that's another thing, like, really, like, acknowledge, this is where I'm at, this is what's happening, this is how I feel, this is what's going wrong, and you say it out loud. Like this, that's why I say a lot of my healing started happening through storytelling, talking,
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
There's three steps that I know that did everything a lot for me in terms of my healing process, and community, storytelling, and community is one of them. It's two of them, right? So start saying, this is what's happening. but
Mhm.
say it from a place of, see, there's a difference here. Nobody wants to know what you're going through until you tell them how you got through or
Yeah.
how you're coming through.
Yes.
So if you don't, you just sound like you're complaining and complaining and complaining, and people can only take so much of that. Because if
Mhm.
all I'm doing is sitting here listening to complaining about the same thing every
Mm.
day, I'm actually making things worse for you. Not only are you now dumping this on me, which is unfair,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Now I am not doing what I should be doing, which is, you know, inviting you to take ownership of what's going on and to come up with a solution.
Mhm.
And that is the work that we have to do.
Mhm.
Otherwise, nothing's going to change. It's not
Mhm.
anybody else's fault. It's not what happened to you when you were a child. It's not what your partner did to you. It's what you are doing to yourself.
Mhm.
And it sounds harsh, but listen, it was harsh. Okay. That is
Yeah.
harsh. It was harsh to have to face. And that's what my spiritual mother, did. And it's funny because I always wanted to be like her.
Mhm.
And I am like her.
Mhm.
She took me under her wings at what, 21. She was a lot older than I was, well, quite a bit, yeah. And and that's what she did with me. She was, no matter how hard it was to love me, she loved me, but she was stern, and it was no BS,
Mhm.
you know so that's the work. The
Mhm.
work is the work that you have to do within yourself and for yourself. And I started having fun with it. I went from being a high school dropout to being addicted to school. I still am. Like, I'm enrolled in courses every year,
Mhm.
every single year since I went back, um, my mid 20s, and I'm 47. And
Mhm.
every year I've taken at least two courses a year, so I'm constantly investing in myself. I am always a part of a few women's groups, programs at a time. Community is huge for me, and even if you don't have a community within your neighborhood that you can go and join or be a part of, listen, we are living in an online world right now. And so
Mhm.
most of the communities that I'm in, except for, in-person events and events that I host myself, conferences, women's empowerment workshops and stuff, there's online events, there's now everything's opened back up. There's in-person events. You have to do the work, because
Mhm.
the more women that you are around, like-minded women, obviously you're going to select the kind of programs and communities you want to be a part of, which should connect with your core desire feelings, or who you desire to be, or what you want to do, maybe your passions, your business, maybe it could be business, personal, professional development, groups that connect with you and what you want, who you want to become, you
Mhm.
know um, groups that have leaders who are doing what you want to do, so that you
Mhm.
can look up to them, so that you can learn from them, so that you can get ideas from them. And this is where the healing people, when they think of healing and self-love, they just think, oh, self-love, I'm going to go get I get manicures and pedicures. And
Yes.
honey, that is probably at the bottom of my list of self-love, okay, or
Exactly. Yes.
self-care. That's,
Yes.
I wasn't doing that stuff when I was healing on my healing journey,
You weren't worried
um,
about the pedicure.
no, not at all.
Right.
No. I was worried about not going back to toxic environments, and, renewing my mind, and right.
Mhm.
So, this is all a part of healing. That
Mhm.
is a part of healing, taking courses, studying. The more you study, the smarter you feel. The smarter you feel, the more love for yourself you'll feel, the more confident you'll feel. There's no more bowing my head down when I'm in a room, and, when they're asking questions, I don't want to answer because I don't know how to talk, or people might, I talk with a slang. Well, I'm from the projects. I speak very well, but there's still that,
Yeah.
Portuguese kind of girl in there, so it's
Yeah.
like, and when I speak on stages, I speak like how I speak,
Yeah.
Salma Hayek and Penelope Cruz aren't worried about their accents. Like, they didn't try to get rid of their accents. They get
Yeah.
amazing, acting roles and parts that they need their accent, right? So, be yourself and embrace who you are. And some people don't know who they are. Okay, this is why you need community. This is
Hmm.
why you need to put yourself out there, attend workshops, attend events. There are tons. Where do you live, Nicole?
I live in Dahlonega, Georgia.
In Georgia. So there are so many free women's programs, business programs, all kinds of
Hmm.
programs all over the world. I'm in Toronto, Canada. We have so many here, So, and back then when I was like on my healing journey, oh my God, I was enrolled in every free program you can think of, Nicole. I'm
Yeah.
not even kidding you. I remember going from like one program to another in the same day. Oh, well, our program runs every Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm already enrolled in that program on Tuesdays. That's okay. It's at a different time. I'd go to one and I would take the bus transit and I would zoom over to the next class, next program. And I'm present and I'm there. And I just started feeling just so good inside, because I got to meet new people, which I wanted. That was one of my goals, was to change my environment,
Yeah.
meet new friends, and share my story, and then also give advice. And oh, what a feeling. Oh my gosh, like as I was healing, I would meet girls, young women who were in worse positions than I was, who were, former prostitutes and
Hmm.
sex trafficked, and they had
Hmm.
pimps, or they were former drug addicts, and now they're healing, and I got to give them advice. And so I
Yeah.
started becoming like a mentor.
And that's
And I'm still,
empowering.
yeah, and I'm still in my mess, but
Yeah.
I'm not where I was, or I'm
Right.
I'm a little ahead of where they are. And then I had mentors who were ahead of me.
Yeah.
So it was just so
Forward
it,
progress.
oh, it was just such a beautiful feeling. And I know 100% that was a huge part of my healing.
Yeah.
Huge, huge,
I
huge.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's hard to tell somebody in crisis when you're moving away from crisis that, hey, you do really have to recognize certain things inside yourself. You really have to do like a lot of self work. And then you also have to change so many different things. It sounds daunting to people. And so it's nice to hear from women like yourself who can say, hey, I also did it. And here's where it took me. Follow us.
Yes. Yeah. You know, your story happens for you, not to you.
Exactly.
And that was a huge aha moment for me. I planned my very first ever women's conference, women's empowering conference. Um, this is going to sound crazy. While I was living in a women's shelter with my, at the time, 17-year-old and 1 year old.
Oh, wow.
And I had a vision of planning this. I had a vision to start a women's empowerment business, which is what I do. This
Mhm.
was It was 2 weeks prior to, out of the blue, I left my ex-husband. 2 weeks I had this
Yeah.
vision. And I said, I'm going to do a women's empowerment event as the business launch. And I'm going to do it at a hotel. And I want about 70, maybe 80 women there. I ended up in a women's shelter. I had given the hotel a $750 deposit to do the event. I said to my son, I need to go back and get that money because I need that money now more than ever. I'm not going to do a women's empowerment event. I'm living in a women's shelter. And my son said, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you still do it? My 17-year-old. And I was
Yeah.
like, come on, really? Like, look where I'm living. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, no. I went the next day to go get the money. She wouldn't give me back the money. Your deposits are non-refundable.
Oh,
I had a fit. I was crying. I was a hot mess. I went back to the shelter and I was crying to my son. And my son was just sitting there going, so do the event, mom. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I was already right. I was already right. So I'm going somewhere with this. I said, your story happens for you, not to you.
Right.
I was already writing my memoir. I had 12 chapters left to write. I completed the 12 chapters while living in that shelter. My photo cover on my book, you'll see it on Amazon. That photo shoot was taken while living in a women's shelter. I completed the book while living in the women's shelter. I not only had the event, I said I wanted 70 to 80 women there. I had over 250 women register for my conference.
Oh my God, girl. That's awesome. See?
All while living 2.5 months in a women's shelter.
Exactly.
Nobody in that room knew where I was living except for one table of women, which were my closest friends.
Right.
I had the key to my first place in my pocket, my first apartment, which I picked up the day before the event. I took the key out and I was on the microphone. I had a live jazz band. I had 17 vendors, live jazz band, speakers. It was so beautiful. Each table held 8 women. 2 tables were filled with women who were living in the women's shelter. I provided childcare in a hotel suite upstairs for their children. I had Johnson Johnson as a sponsor. They sponsored huge baskets like this big for each mom from the shelter.
Oh,
It
wow.
was one of the
That's
best moments
amazing.
of my life. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And I held that key and I said, most of you in this room, I said, except for maybe a handful of people, don't know what I'm about to share. But for the past 2.5 months, while I planned this event, I've been living in a women's shelter. As soon as that came out of my mouth, I just started bawling.
Oh.
Bawling. There wasn't, when I finished doing my speech and I said, this key, I just picked up to my new place, my new home. And I wanted to show you this key. And I say this to say that every single one of you in this room have the key to create the life that you desire,
Mm,
whatever that is. There wasn't one dry eye in the room. Not
that's
one,
awesome.
not one, not one. Like it was unbelievable. Like I have goosebumps just thinking about it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I say this to say, again, your story happens for you. Doing the work that I do today was always my destiny. And there were certain things that I had to go through to prepare me
Mhm.
to be this woman, to
Mhm.
take on this position.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Man, that's awesome. That's a powerful story, and it can happen to anyone who wants it, right?
Yes.
You can do anything no matter what if you stop focusing on if you sat in that woman's shelter and was like, "I'm in a woman's shelter. There's nothing I can do," and just bided your time until they told you you had to go to the next place, it would have been a very different outcome. But you didn't
Yeah.
let it stop you.
Yes. No, I didn't. I didn't. I became, I wouldn't change anything about my life. Nothing.
Mhm.
I I was and am a very an extremely resilient. I actually speak a lot on resilience, and I resilience saved my life.
Yeah.
It really, really did, and it's one of the things that unfortunately our youth today, don't have.
Yeah.
They don't. They don't. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think it's because there's so much focus on other things that they don't have that resilience? Do you think it's a matter of desensitization? Why do
Uh,
you think that
yeah.
is?
It's not one thing. It's a combination of a few
Yeah.
things. Definitely, as parents, we have to take some blame for that. We don't we don't allow them. We don't challenge them.
Mhm.
We do everything for them. We overprotect. We Oh, everything is extreme,
Mhm.
because of how we lived as children, what we didn't have, what we had to go through. And so we're we keep them so we're overprotective. We don't, they a lot of these kids, especially young girls, they don't know how to cook, they don't clean, they
Mhm.
don't, we had chores, we had rules, we had consequences. We got beat, we got spanked, you know, right? And children say couldn't do anything about it. Like, you're gonna tell who? Another beating, just
Yeah.
for saying that, you know. Um, so that's a part of it. They're weak. They're extremely weak. Social media has a lot to do with it. Um, it's a combination of a few things. It's a
Yes.
combination, but in short, um, they they've never had to um, take much responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very responsible. They're not. So it's a combination of a few things, but I do believe that us as their parents, my generation, and then even above me, uh, we have a lot to, yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
I parent the style that I do, and why I wrote my book series about communication with your kids in an A through Z form is because of that exact reason.
Wow.
I did not want to hand my child a device and just let them get through the days until they turned 18. So I started communicating with my children from the moment they were born. And we
Mm,
have those deep conversations about all the things that are coming at them in this world. I think a lot of it is unpreparedness because parents don't know how to approach their kids. They
yes.
think they're too young. They,
Yes.
yeah,
Well, they also didn't get it.
yeah,
Our parents never really I know for most people,
same.
they never really communicated with us.
Yeah, we were just left to figure it out. And we
Yes.
assume, I think, as a generation, that the next generations will. Well, that's not true
No.
because we're all different.
No, social media
Yeah.
will teach them.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're
And
being raised by
it's
that.
when you and I were kids, we didn't have the internet, so we had to go to the library and we had to find our books that were the right books, that gave
Yes,
the right information, and we know how to decipher. They're just thrown all the information and never told. How can you find out what is real and what is fake?
right. And we
Yeah.
also, and then there was a combination of all the other things that we did that helped to make us more resilient, which was sports. We were
Mhm.
extremely active.
Mhm.
If we weren't playing double dutch, we were skateboarding, breakdancing, track and field, cross country. Like, have you seen the track and field cross country meets now? How small they are?
Yes. Yes.
They
100%.
struggle to get kids enrolled and registered,
Mhm.
and
Well,
almost everybody makes it. And almost everybody, the tryouts, even if you really weren't supposed to make it, they need you.
mhm. Mhm.
So it's because our youth, and I'm gonna speak mostly about the girls, because a lot of the boys are still extremely active and playing sports in schools. There's always a lot of boys that try out for whether it's football or basketball or hockey, whatever it is. But the girls, like, a lot of the girls, just they're on their devices, and that's their life, and
Mhm.
they're worried about boys and all these other things, and they're not, even when you look at something as small as the way they're shaped in comparison to how we were. I didn't know a single obese person growing up.
Mhm.
Not a
Mhm.
single, not one. And now it's because of their diets and a
Mhm.
lot of fast foods. They're not active, they're just sitting on their gadgets, they're sitting in the rooms on games, they're playing, they're not moving.
Right. And
And
two
so,
parents are always gone. We were latchkey kids too, but there was a certain standard of how it was for us when our parents were home. Our parents were telling us stuff and communicating. You know what I mean?
right,
Whereas here, you're
we had,
working 15-hour days. Both parents, they come home. Did you eat? Did you do the things? I'm going to bed. Good
yes,
night.
yeah, we had structure and we had
Mhm.
routine.
Mhm.
That's another huge um in terms of resilience, right?
Mhm.
That's really big too, the structure and the routine. It's so funny because we had very little TV time. My
Mhm.
TV had the antennas back then. I'm sure yours
Yeah.
did too, right?
Yeah.
So, but what's so interesting about this is we feared my father so much that even as a blind man who wasn't home, when he said, "You can watch TV for 15 minutes while we're gone, and I'll know if you turned the TV on," we believed him.
Yes.
We
Yes.
believed him. So
And you
there
know
were
what
times,
though? What's weird is they did know. They did know.
But see, in this case, it was just the knob that you'd have to turn on. The TV would turn off and on, and so he wouldn't know. But in our minds, we're like, we would like, how do you think he knows? And we would study the TV. We would check to see if there was like a tape thing there, and then I'd say to my brother, okay, you turn it on. My brother would be like, no, man, I'm not turning it on. You turn it on. I'm like, I'm not turning it on. And then we'd be close to it, and we want to turn it on so bad, but we feared him so much. We did not ever turn it on.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
knowing that we had, and mind you, I grew up in it was an unhealthy environment, but I'm gonna say, Nicole, like there was a lot of great things, that I learned.
Mhm.
um I mean, you know as crazy as this sounds, it's gonna sound so crazy because my father was like two different people. He was a severe alcoholic, and he was two different people, when
Mhm.
he was drinking. And when he was sober, every day when he would teach us all these things about life and about the kind of friends you should have and about self-respect. My dad spoke a lot about self-respect and your reputation. And
Yeah.
it's crazy because you would think, oh my God, like, but like I said, he was two different people. And so he taught me a lot about, even like, even about parenting. There's things that I did take from him. you
Mhm.
know um so there was a lot of bad, but there was also a lot of good. A lot of
Right.
good. We had a lot of there was a lot of structure and a lot of and routine.
Yep. And
um
those core values were instilled by conversation. I
yeah,
don't know how much of that is really happening these days.
not much at all.
And it's even leaking into the adults because it's the adults that are struggling too, and they can't figure out how to get the answers.
Yes,
They're in their 20s, they're in their
yes,
30s, and they're struggling because they didn't have it like we had it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Well, so tell me what programs you offer. Where can we find you?
yeah.
I could talk to you all day, but unfortunately, neither one of us can
Right.
has the time for that.
um, yeah, that would be so easy, right? To just sit here and just chat all day.
Yeah.
I got my coffee. Yeah. So I actually, so in terms of, my website is Elizabeth Correia, just my name.com. On all social media platforms, on Instagram, it's MSS Elizabeth Correia. And then I've got my book is also on, you can get it on my website or on Amazon. My book title is If You Played in My Playground. But as soon as you type in Elizabeth Correa, it'll come up anyway. And in terms of what I offer, so I actually have currently right now, a mini course
Oh,
on forgiveness, because it's what I'm creating right now is digital programs. I have one launching soon on personal transformation. Um, but I wanted the foundation to be forgiveness, because that's where things started to really heal for me.
mhm,
Um, was letting go and
mhm,
and self-forgiveness and forgiving them,
mhm.
and I have 100%. I speak to my father. I love my father. I speak to my mother. I visit both. There's no bad feelings there. There's no, oh, I forgive but I won't forget, no attitude like that. It's
Right.
complete forgiveness. And so the course, just it's a mini course. It's a 9-day course, which is really cool. I don't want to make it long, and so it's mini. It's mostly pre-guided meditations where I'm speaking. So it's a beautiful course. It's my little baby, I like to say, because it's my first digital product, right? So I've got that. That is on my website. It's also in my Instagram bio link. Like there's a link there that has the links to everything in there. Really, it's one
Okay.
link. Um, yeah, and that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it. I think if there's something I'm gonna leave the listeners, viewers with, it is, um, to get really clear with how you want to feel,
Mhm.
how you truly want to feel. Get clear with what is it? Is it peace? Is it freedom? Is it healthy? And then set goals according to how you want to feel. And it'll be different, even the way you go about accomplishing your goals or creating your daily tasks. they're gonna, it's just so different. If you say
Yeah.
you want to feel healthy, then you know that you have to create a morning self-care routine, which can involve, your exercise, your meditation, your, prayers, affirmations, what you make to eat in the morning, something healthy. Because if you say you want to feel healthy, then now you got to do the things that are going to help you to feel healthy. And
Yeah.
if you don't, well, again, it's because you're in your own way and you just
Mm-hmm.
got to get out of your way. And
Yeah.
remember that your story happens for you and not to you.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Nicole.
If you liked this and other episodes, please click subscribe, like, and share so others can enjoy them too. Thank you so much for listening.